Hi there, I'm Angie Zimmerman, the Flower Diva. Welcome to Pacific Callas. Today I'm showing you how to process roses, which is another way for saying cleaning the roses. In this industry, we like to say process. So this is how they come. There's always going to be a sleeve, and there's this cardboard that's protecting the rose heads. There's always going to be something holding them together, a rubber band or some kind of a wired zip type of a thing holding them together. And you want to cut that loose and cut loose the sleeve. And it's better to cut this than to try and slip the roses out, but you know, you could slip the roses out because this cardboard is going to protect them. You want to carefully open up this cardboard wrapper. And once you do that, it reveals the roses that are inside. So they've been carefully packed. Typically there are 25 stems and a bunch of roses that come like this. This is wholesale, professional quality roses. So this is different than what you buy at a big box store or at the grocery store. And when you buy them somewhere else, they normally have been cleaned and processed already. When you buy them wholesale, this is the way they come. So I'm going to carefully remove a stem, and I have two different types of rose strippers. These are actually my favorite. They are sometimes hard to find, but there's a spring inside, and I control the tension of that spring. So I push that around the stem of the flower and then gently pull. And that removes thorns, or at least breaks the tips off of the thorns and any foliage. So the idea is that you want to remove any foliage that's going to fall below a water line. So if I were going to put these in a vase, and the vase was this tall, I'd want to remove everything that was going to be in that water in that vase. Okay? When you're using these types of flowers for a bridal bouquet, it's a little bit different, because typically you want to remove all the foliage because you're holding the flowers at this point. You would not, you know, this greenery would just be in your way. It would not do anything for you. And I am using some of these for a bridal bouquet, so I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the foliage. I also want to point out on some of these, and I can see this here, often on certain varieties of roses, it's not on every variety, there are little tiny thorns on this upper third of the stem. And you want to do something to break those down. So I'm just using the back of my knife and gently scraping them so that I'm taking off the point essentially from the thorn. Because if you don't, that's going to end up in your finger. And these really hurt, these little tiny ones, and they're also pretty hard to find. I'm just double checking that this one doesn't also have any of those little thorns. Okay, and I have a plastic garbage bag laid flat on the countertop to catch all of this debris because it is pretty dirty. And all varieties of roses are different. So these are really not very thorny, which is nice. I had some others that I processed a couple days ago that were incredibly thorny. This is another type of rose stripper, and this is the variety that you'll probably find the easiest. I know that you can find these at hardware type stores or garden centers is where you can find these. Plus you can also find them at wholesale flower supply stores. So let's go ahead and reveal another rose here, and I'll show you again. This is also spring loaded. You put this on either side of the stem and then you gently pull. And I say gently because if you put too much tension here, you can actually pull and scrape the stem itself of the flower, and you don't want to do that because that just allows bacteria to get inside the stem, which will ultimately allow that flower to die faster. So this broke off the tips, but it didn't really remove them very well. I'm going to try my other one. All right, so these are just stubborn. They don't want to come off. So now, when that happens, if it's a problem, it really isn't for how I'm going to use these, but I just want to show you all the options and solutions that are available to you. You can take your clippers and cut those thorns off that way as well. So a little more time consuming to do that. You can also do it by hand. So really, I've just given you 4 different ways that you can clean these flower stems. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my favorite way. And I'm not sure how many of these I need for my bouquet, so I'm going to do about half of them completely stripped and then half of them with some foliage on them. These are very pretty roses. It's a very nice head size. And often that head size will vary by the variety of rose. And the other thing that can cause the head size to vary is the stem length. So when you order roses, normally you indicate what length you want. 40 centimeter is really the smallest, and that would be about this long. 50 centimeter is going to be, a little bit longer than that. 60 centimeter, 70 centimeter, I'm pretty sure that these are 60s. They might even be 70s, but they're longer than what I would normally order for wedding work. But again, if I'm concerned about the head size, then you want to order the longer length, because typically those flower heads will be larger than the shorter stem lengths. All right, now these roses are really carefully packaged, and there's pieces of cardboard and paper that are separating layers of them. And I'm going to try and hold this up for you to see again. You can see that they put some of the flowers at one level and then the next set of flowers at an upper level. And then underneath here, you'll see that they've repeated the same pattern. So it just allows them to protect all of those flower heads, and it gives a little more room. And then when they put this cardboard around, everything stays really nicely put, which is important because you want to make sure that the flowers arrive not broken and fresh and ready to use. So again, I see a couple thorns up here, so I'm just using the back of this knife to gently remove those. Okay, so for the second half, I'm going to leave some foliage on. And again, if you were making like a dozen roses in a vase, I think the foliage is really pretty. And I like using the foliage that comes with a natural flower. So I would leave at least this much on if I were arranging a dozen roses in a vase. So another piece of information that might be useful to you is, as I've showed you, these flowers are kind of layered when they're packaged. That also means that the stem length varies. So the lower flowers have shorter stems than the higher flowers. I don't know if that made sense, so let me try and show you before I've used this whole layer up. So remember, we have 4 flowers here, and then there were 4 flowers underneath it, and then 4 flowers above, and then 4 flowers underneath. So I'm talking about this flower is going to be shorter by a head length than the flowers that are above it. You can see how messy this is. So you want to make sure that you protect your floor wherever you're doing this. Normally I don't do this in my kitchen. I would do this in the garage. Okay, so that is step one. Step two is the roses, particularly roses, come in with something called guard petals. And those are the petals on the outside, and their primary purpose in life is to keep the inside petals pristine. So now we want to inspect all of those and remove any damaged guard petals. Okay, so again, I'm carefully inspecting, and this has got a tear in the petal, so I'm removing it. And this has got just kind of like a lump, a crease in the petal, so again, I'm removing that. And normally that's all you have to remove, is just one or two petals. Once in a while, you'll have a really bad rose, and you'll have to remove more than one petal. Now, these petals don't look bad at all, but tiny, tiny, tiny blemishes. So I'm just going to remove that just so that I have all the perfect stuff showing. Because again, I'm using these for bridal bouquets, and you know, a bride's going to carry that up close. She's going to be looking at it for a good part of the day. You want to make sure that what she sees is beautiful. If you were going to be decorating an aisle with rose petals, which is a very popular thing to do when you're working with weddings, these guard petals can be used for that, because honest, the blemishes that are on these particular roses are pretty insignificant. Sometimes, as I mentioned, they will be more significant and then you wouldn't want to use them, but I would definitely use these to scatter on an aisle for a wedding. You could even use them to scatter around a cake or around the base of a centerpiece. The other thing you could do with these is put them into a small cylinder vase, pretty much pack them in there, then pour a little bit of water on top of that and put a floating candle on top. And it's a really simple centerpiece to make. And because roses come in so many different colors, you can really very easily color coordinate that to your particular party theme. Now, this rose has got a few more problems than all the others. So I tore off 4 petals from that rose. Excuse me. You'll want to edit that out. When you tear the guard petals off, make sure that you tear them completely off. It looks really unprofessional if you leave little pieces of petal at the base. That one looks good. Okay. Step 3. Now we want to give each stem a fresh cut. I have a bucket of water down here. I'm not putting it up on top of the counter because I didn't want it to block your view, but this has already got water and preservative in it. And now I'm going to give each flower a big slanted fresh cut using my clippers. I'm going to dip it in the hydrating solution, and then I'm going to drop it into my bucket of water. So you can actually do this faster. You don't have to do each flower separately. I like to do this. I gently put them on their heads so that I can see all the stem ends. And then I go along with my clippers and I cut them all at one time. And then I can dip them all at one time as well. And by doing this, it allows you to see the difference in the stem length in this one bunch of flowers. So you can see these were the shorter ones and here are the taller ones. You want to make sure and cut off at least a ½ inch. An inch is better, and you can certainly cut off more than that. Like I've cut off probably 2.5 to 3 inches here. This is easily 3 to 4 inches. And that's how you process your roses.